There's a strange kind of silence that follows collapse. No sirens. No dramatic music. Just the heavy stillness of knowing you've fallen from a great height. I was Owen Granger, tech pioneer, millionaire by 29, billionaire by 35. I'd built Horizon Tech from a battered secondhand laptop and a folding table in a leaky apartment. In the world's eyes, I was invincible, indestructible, until I wasn't. The morning it happened, everything felt normal, or at least what passed for normal in my life. My schedule was packed. A merger negotiation at 10, a product launch at noon, investor meetings all afternoon. I didn't have time for breakfast, barely sipped my coffee. At 9:43 a.m., standing in the glass conference room overlooking the city I thought I owned, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. I ignored it. No room for weakness. When the pain sharpened, spreading down my left arm, I staggered. Faces blurred. Voices sounded underwater. My knees buckled, and for the first time in my adult life, I lost control. I collapsed right there, mid-sentence, mid-deal, mid-dream. When I woke, I was no longer the commanding titan of industry. I was a patient in Mercy Heights Hospital, tethered to beeping monitors, for lines threading into my veins. Vulnerable. Human. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. I didn't feel lucky. I felt exposed. Lying there, listening to the mechanical rhythm of the machines, I realized something. I didn't know who truly cared about Owen Granger, the man. Not Owen Granger, the moneymaker. Not Owen Granger, the power broker. Just me. An idea, reckless but irresistible, crept into my mind. What if I stayed silent? What if I pretended to be unconscious and watched? It was the oldest trick in the book, and yet it felt like my only chance at truth. Truth that had been buried under success, deals, and dollar signs for too long. So I made a decision. I closed my eyes. I regulated my breathing. I surrendered to the role. The nurses came and went, their steps soft, their conversations muted. Doctors poked, prodded, adjusted medication. Administrators whispered about liability. Family? Friends? Associates? They didn't come. Not that first day. Not the second. By the third day, a young nurse was assigned to me full-time. Her name tag read, Aria Dawson. At first, she was just another figure in the blur, a soft-spoken woman in blue scrubs who checked my vitals and adjusted my blanket. But it didn't take long to notice there was something different about her. She treated me like I mattered. Not because of my net worth. Not because I could one day sign her paycheck. But because she believed every life was worth fighting for. She hummed when she thought no one listened. Songs from her childhood, no doubt. Simple, haunting melodies. She spoke to me too. Quietly. As if trying to fill the aching silence. "Hang in there, Mr. Granger," she would whisper, brushing my hand gently as she took my pulse. "You're stronger than you think." Each word was a stitch, mending something torn inside me. It wasn't just kindness. There was sadness, too. A heaviness clinging to her voice, the kind born from burdens too big for one person to carry. I listened. I watched. And as the hours bled into days, I realized Aria Dawson wasn't just caring for me. She was teaching me what I had forgotten somewhere along the way. That real strength isn't in fortune or fame. It's in compassion, perseverance, quiet courage. Late one night, when the hallway lights dimmed and the hospital sank into its usual hush, Aria thought she was alone. She pulled up the chair beside my bed, sighing deeply, rubbing her tired eyes. "You're so lucky, Mr. Granger," she murmured. "You built something real." "Me? I'm just trying to save my brother." She trailed off, swallowing back emotion. I stayed still, heart pounding differently this time, not from illness, but from revelation. Aria had burdens too, but unlike the board members scheming over my company, or the so-called friends who couldn't bother to call, she stayed. She served. She believed. It shook me more than any heart attack could. The next morning, Wallace Trent, my chief financial officer, paid a visit. He didn't bother with flowers or kind words. Instead, he leaned in close to another executive and whispered, If Granger doesn't wake up soon, we'll move forward without him. Sell off Horizon piece by piece. Cash out before the board smells blood. They thought I couldn't hear. They were wrong. Bitterness curdled in my gut. Not because they plotted against me, that was expected in business. No, it hurt because I realized how hollow the empire I had built had become. I was surrounded by sharks in tailored suits, ready to carve up my life's work without a second thought. And I had let it happen. In the pursuit of success, I had forgotten why I had started in the first place. I lay there, staring blankly at the ceiling, planning. When I got out of this bed, I wasn't just going to reclaim Horizon Tech. I was going to reclaim my soul. And somehow, someway, I was going to change Aria's life. Because if the world still had people like her, people who fought, cared, and dreamed despite the odds, then maybe there was hope for me too. The days stretched long, but inside, something in me sharpened. Every conversation, every whispered plot around me, fed a fire that I hadn't felt in years. I had once built a company from pure grit, brick by invisible brick, but somewhere along the way, I'd let others paint over it with their greed. Now, lying helpless in this sterile room, I finally saw everything with painful clarity. But Aria, she remained the one bright spot in all the darkness. Every day, she treated me like a human being, not a fallen king. She told me stories when she thought no one could hear, about her childhood in a tiny town where neighbors helped each other, about her mother working double shifts at a diner to put food on the table. She spoke of her brother, Jacob, a brilliant teenager, fighting a rare blood disease with nothing but courage and a mountain of unpaid bills. "I don't have much, Mr. Granger," she said one afternoon, gently fixing the bandages on my arm. "But I have faith. That has to be enough." It stunned me how easily she gave everything and expected nothing. Meanwhile, the people I once trusted had already started circling like vultures. From my motionless position, I became a silent witness to all their plans. Some visitors came, feigning concern, but their words were hollow. "He's lived a good life. Maybe it's time to let go." "It's a shame, but business must move on." Every comment hardened my resolve. When I recovered, and I would recover, there would be a reckoning. Still, I waited. I listened. I learned. And every night, without fail, Aria would stay a little longer by my side. One night, I heard her voice crack, barely a whisper. "Please, Mr. Granger, I know you don't know me, but if you're still in there, please fight. If you wake up, maybe you could help someone like me believe that good things are still possible." Her quiet confession pierced through me deeper than any betrayal. I had everything. She had nothing but hope. And yet, she was the one giving me strength. I wanted to reach out,
to grab her hand,
to tell her that I heard her, that I wasn't giving up. But I wasn't ready yet. The truth needed more time to unfold. Meanwhile, Wallace and his cronies became bolder. They started meeting in my room under the pretense of checking in, laying out blueprints for a future without me. I memorized every plan, every dirty secret. We'll strip down Horizon's assets, sell off the subsidiaries. The brand will survive on paper, but we'll pocket the real money, Wallace whispered one afternoon. My blood boiled. They thought I was finished. But they didn't know me at all. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to rebuild. And Aria Dawson would be the first person I lifted up when I did. One afternoon, while Aria adjusted my foreline, I caught a glimpse of something sticking out of her pocket, a folded, worn paper. She tucked it away quickly, not realizing I had seen it. When she left, I strained my eyes toward the tray, where she sometimes set her things. Later that night, after she dozed off in the chair beside me, her head resting against the wall, I summoned every ounce of strength I had. Slowly, painfully, I inched my hand forward. My muscles screamed, but I forced myself to move. I reached the edge of the tray, nudged the paper closer with my fingers. It was a hospital bill. $287,000. Past due. Final notice. Jacob Dawson. Stage for lymphoma. I swallowed hard. In that moment, I understood Aria's late-night prayers, her silent tears, her tireless devotion. She wasn't just a nurse doing her job. She was a sister fighting for her family. She stayed with me not because I was wealthy or powerful, but because she believed. Because somewhere deep inside her, she still held onto the fragile hope that goodness existed in the world. I couldn't stay still anymore. Not for myself. Not for her. The next morning, I took a risk. When Aria leaned over to adjust my pillow, I moved. Barely a twitch of my fingers. But it was enough. She gasped, stepping back, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mr. Granger?" I twitched again, this time more deliberate. Tears welled in her eyes. "You're awake. You're really awake." I blinked slowly, the most I could manage. She ran to call the doctors, her excitement filling the sterile air like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Within hours, a flurry of tests began. Scans, blood work, neurological assessments. I cooperated silently, conserving my strength. As the doctors buzzed around me, I locked eyes with Aria across the room. She smiled, radiant, relieved, utterly sincere. In that moment, I knew. When I walked out of this hospital, I wasn't walking back into my old life. I was walking towards something better. Something real. Aria didn't know it yet, but her world, and mine, were about to change forever. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for her, too. Rehabilitation was brutal. Every movement hurt. Every step was a battle. Muscles that once powered me through 18-hour workdays now trembled under the weight of my own body. But I had made a silent promise, to Aria, to myself, and I wasn't about to break it. For weeks, Aria was my anchor. Not just my nurse, but my motivator, my steady guide back to life. "One more step, Mr. Granger. You've got this," she would say, her hand resting lightly on my back. When I wanted to collapse, her voice kept me upright. When I doubted myself, her faith filled the gaps. Strangely, we never spoke about what she had confessed beside my bed. She didn't know how much I knew about Jacob's illness, about the sacrifices she was making. But I remembered every word. Inside me, a different kind of power was growing, stronger than the ambition that had once driven me to build an empire. This was purpose. Still, I had to play it carefully. If Wallace and the others sensed I was back to full strength too soon, they'd accelerate their plans. I needed time to position the final moves. One evening, after a long therapy session, Aria lingered by my bedside. "You're getting stronger every day," she smiled, setting a small tray of food down for me. "At this rate, you'll be out of here in no time." I managed a faint smile. "Only because you believed in me," I rasped. It was the first full sentence I'd spoken to her since waking up. She blinked rapidly, surprised and maybe a little emotional, but she hit it well. "You're the fighter, Mr. Granger. I just reminded you," she said softly. Before she could leave, I mustered my strength and asked, "Tell me about your brother." She froze, a flicker of fear crossing her face. I shouldn't burden you with that," she stammered. But I shook my head, encouraging her. Slowly, hesitantly, she sat back down. And for the first time, Aria told me the whole story. Jacob, barely 17, had been diagnosed a year ago. Experimental treatments could save his life, but insurance covered little, and the hospital bills were suffocating them. Aria had picked up every shift she could, cutting corners on food, rent, even selling her car, all to buy her brother more time. "He's everything to me," she whispered, staring at her clasped hands. "I promised my mom, before she passed, that I'd protect him, no matter what." Her voice cracked, raw and trembling, and for a long moment, she sat in silence, gathering herself. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized Aria embodied a strength far greater than mine. Not the kind built in boardrooms or skyscrapers, but forged in sleepless nights, in quiet sacrifices, in unwavering loyalty. And I made another vow that night. Aria Dawson would never have to carry that burden alone again. By the time I was discharged, I had a plan. A plan that would right every wrong, both mine and those festering inside Horizon Tech. I returned to my penthouse quietly. No press releases. No public fanfare. I wanted Wallace and the others to believe they were safe, to believe I was still too weak to fight back. Meanwhile, I spent days gathering evidence. Emails. Contracts. Secret recordings Arya had unknowingly helped me collect during my coma. Every whispered betrayal, every plotted scheme was documented. But I didn't move yet. I waited. Instead, I focused on the other, more important part of my plan.
Arya.
I contacted one of the best oncology specialists in the country, an old friend who owed me a favor from years ago. I arranged for Jacob to be evaluated for an experimental treatment program, one that didn't just buy time but offered a real shot at remission. And I made sure every penny of his expenses would be covered. Anonymously, at first. I wasn't doing this for recognition. I was doing it because for the first time in years I had rediscovered what wealth was truly for. To lift others up. The day the paperwork finalized, I sat alone in my study, staring out at the sprawling skyline. The city glittered, indifferent as ever, but inside me, something was different. I didn't just want to be a billionaire. I wanted to be a builder again. Of hope. Of futures. Of lives. The next morning, I made my move. Wallace Trent entered the Horizon Tech headquarters with the smug confidence of a man who believed he owned the world. He didn't know that waiting for him in the boardroom was the full weight of the law. Attorneys. Auditors. Federal agents. I sat at the head of the long glass table, wearing a simple dark suit. No ties, no theatrics, just purpose. Wallace's face drained of color when he saw me.
Alive. Strong.
And very much in control. Mr. Granger. I didn't know you were coming, he stammered. I leaned forward, folding my hands calmly.
No, Wallace.
You didn't. And that was your first mistake. I dropped a thick folder onto the table, filled with damning evidence. Your second mistake, I continued, my voice steady as steel, was thinking I'd stay silent forever. The takedown was swift and surgical. Wallace was removed, his assets frozen pending investigation. Other executives scrambled, trying to distance themselves, but it was too late. I had built Horizon Tech once, and now I would rebuild it.
Stronger. Cleaner.
Better. Later that week, I returned to Mercy Heights Hospital. Not as a patient this time, as a man with a mission. I found Arya in the pediatric wing, reading a storybook to a young girl hooked up to N4. She looked up, startled, when she saw me. Mr. Granger, she exclaimed, standing so fast the book tumbled from her lap. I smiled warmly.
Owen, I said.
Please, call me Owen. She smiled back, uncertain, clearly wondering why I was there. I walked closer, lowering my voice. Arya, there's something you should know, I said, slipping a small envelope into her hand. She frowned, opening it. Inside was a letter from the specialist and confirmation of Jacob's full acceptance into the program. Paid in full. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she even finished reading. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you? Because you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, I said softly. Now it's my turn to believe in you. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. And for the first time in a long time, standing there in that quiet hospital wing, I didn't feel like a patient or a billionaire or a CEO. I just felt human. And that, I realized, was the greatest success I had ever achieved. Over the next several months, I made sweeping changes. At Horizon Tech, we dismantled the corrupt web Wallace had spun. I reinstated a company culture based not just on innovation, but integrity. I personally funded scholarships for underprivileged students passionate about engineering, opened medical research labs in underserved areas, and created programs for young entrepreneurs who, like me once, only needed someone to believe in them. But my proudest project was still secret. It started with a simple idea. What if we could create a place where people like Arya and her brother could find hope without drowning in debt? A hospital, fully funded, where no one would ever be turned away because of their bank account. It sounded impossible, which, of course, made me want to do it even more. I called it the Dawson Center for Healing, though Arya didn't know yet. Not yet. She was too busy saving lives in her quiet, tireless way. And honestly, I was still trying to find the courage. You see, somewhere along the way, my admiration for Arya had deepened into something more. Something terrifying and wonderful.
Love.
Not the fleeting kind born in glittering parties or boardroom alliances, but real love, rooted in respect, watered by time, grown through shared struggles. But could she ever feel the same? Could someone so good, so genuine, ever look at a man like me, scarred by ambition, marred by past mistakes, and see more than what I used to be? I didn't know, but I had to try. One crisp autumn afternoon, I invited her to meet me. Not in my office, not at the hospital, but in the heart of the city, at the sight of a brand new building rising against the skyline. She arrived, wearing her scrubs and a confused smile. Owen, she corrected herself, cheeks flushing. You wanted to see me? I nodded, motioning for her to follow. We walked along the steel skeleton of what would soon be the Dawson Center. Workers bustled around us, hammering, welding, shouting instructions over the noise. I wanted you to see something, I said. Something you inspired. I led her to the center of the construction site, where a massive banner hung between two beams. The Dawson Center for Healing, where hope lives. Arya gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. Is this? She whispered, unable to finish the sentence. I turned to her, heart hammering in my chest. It's yours, Arya, I said simply. Named after you. Built because of you. Tears welled in her eyes. But why? She choked out. I took a deep breath. Because when I was lost, you found me, I said. When everyone else saw a broken man, you saw someone worth saving. You reminded me what life is supposed to be about. And you showed me a strength I had forgotten existed. The kind that doesn't come from wealth or power, but from kindness. From love. The word hung between us, raw and real. She blinked rapidly, tears spilling freely now. Owen, she whispered. I stepped closer, my voice barely above a whisper. I love you, Arya. Not because you saved me, but because you are the kind of person who saves people every single day. Because you are brave and good and beautiful, and because every day I spent pretending to be asleep, I realized more and more that my life meant nothing without you in it. Her hands trembled as she reached for mine. I was so scared, she admitted. I thought you'd forget, that you'd move on. I shook my head fiercely. I couldn't. I won't. Not ever. For a moment, the noise of the city faded away. There was only us, two broken souls who had found healing in each other. And then, in the middle of the construction site, under the half-built skeleton of a dream, I kissed her. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't scripted. It was real. Messy.
Tear-streaked.
Beautiful. And in that kiss, I found something no fortune had ever given me. Home. A year later, the Dawson Center opened its doors. Thousands gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Doctors, nurses, families who had once felt invisible. Arya stood beside me, radiant in a simple blue dress, her hand tucked into mine. Jacob, now healthy and thriving, beamed from the front row. When it came time for me to speak, I stood at the podium and looked out over the crowd. There was a time, I began, when I thought success meant towers and stock prices. When I believed wealth alone defined worth. I paused, glancing at Arya. But then a woman reminded me that true wealth is measured by the lives we touch, the hope we build, the love we give. This center is not just a hospital. It's a promise that no one will be left behind, that healing is for everyone, that we are, all of us, stronger together. The crowd erupted into applause. But it wasn't the sound of approval that filled my heart. It was the quiet squeeze of Arya's hand in mine, the silent promise of a future we would build together. A future richer than anything money could buy. A future born from a simple truth. Sometimes, the greatest fortune isn't what you have, it's who you become. And thanks to Arya, I had become the man I was always meant to be.